Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well and keeping safe. Thank you for making the time to attend this webinar. I'm Saivan Taneja, a UAV and prototype engineer at T-Works, and T-Works is India's largest prototyping facility and a Government of Telangana initiative. I'm happy to be hosting this webinar with my good friend and colleague Krishna Bulli, Director of Home Away Essentials, a personal hygiene company, and today we'll be discussing the current state of COVID-19 and the role of innovation and technology, the role that innovation and technology can play in curbing it.
Our panelists for the evening are our esteemed industry experts, Dr. Anand Kumar and Dr. Ranga Reddy. Dr. Anand Kumar is the Managing Director of Indian Immunologicals Ltd, which is one of the largest public unit undertaking of the Government of India. Which is into vaccine manufacturing. I am sure he will elaborate upon that further. Dr. Ranga Reddy is the founder president of the Infection Control Academy of India. Once again, welcome to this webinar. Hope you learn a lot.
Without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Anand Kumar to start off the webinar by introducing himself and giving us an overview of his work. Dr. Anand Kumar, I think you are muted.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and I'm glad to be a part of this webinar. And let me introduce myself. As you rightly said, I'm the Managing Director of Indian Immunologicals Ltd, which is a subsidiary of the National Dairy Development Board. And basically about me, I did my master's in microbiology from Coimbatore, PSG, and subsequently I did my PhD in microbiology from the Vector Control Research Center, which is an Indian Council of Medical Research Center based at Pondicherry. After that, I joined a startup biotech firm in Hyderabad, uh, which was into basically diagnostics. So I was in diagnostics for some period of time, and ultimately this company wanted to venture into recombinant DNA vaccines. So somewhere in 1994, I became the project manager for a recombinant hepatitis B vaccine. And I was sent to Germany for training on genetically engineered vaccines. And I came back to Hyderabad, set up the plant here. And I worked on it for some years. And because those days, this word genetically engineered was not a nice word. And so I had a lot of persuasion to do with Delhi to give me approval for the vaccine. And out of frustration, one fine day, I decided that I'll leave. And then I landed up in New Zealand. And all I knew about that country was basically it's a cricket playing country, and I just landed up there. And there I worked for 7 years for various companies, including Shering Plough. And I had an opportunity to work on various animal vaccines in New Zealand. Subsequently, I moved from New Zealand to Australia. I worked for Pfizer Global Manufacturing. So that was on sterile injectables. And somewhere in 2007, based on a request from a company called Vocard, based out of Mumbai, they asked me to come back to India and work for them. So I joined as a vice president for Vocard Biotechnologies, looking after all their insulin and other recombinant protein manufacturing. In 2010 end, I had an opportunity to join IL as a deputy managing director. So I was a DMD for nearly 6 years. And in 2016, I became a managing director of this company, and I've been continuing for the last 4 or 5 years now. Also, like as you grow up in your career, like you first take care of yourself, then you take care for the company, and then later you have to do something for the industry that you work in. And that way, I've been a expert member for FICCI in their biotechnology and pharmaceutical committee, and I've also been a expert member for CII for their biotechnology committee. And also, I used to be a volunteer for the United States Pharmacopoeia for 5 years. And I'm currently also a volunteer or an expert for the Indian Pharmacopoeia for the last almost 6-7 years. So that's a brief introduction about myself and about the company. As you say, Indian Immunologicals Ltd is a subsidiary of the National Dairy Development Board. It's one of the largest manufacturers of vaccines in India. We make both animal and human vaccines, and we cater to more than 45 countries. And we are one of the largest suppliers to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. We are also into COVID-19 vaccine manufacturing. We are actually pursuing two strategies for this. One is utilizing our existing facilities to make repurpose it to make Covaxin. And the other thing is we are developing a live attenuated vaccine, which we'll talk about later as we go through the webinar. And that's going to be a very, very unique vaccine, which will definitely help solve India's problems with COVID-19. With this, again, I'm happy to be on the show and good to interact. Again, Dr. Ranga Reddy is a well-known person to me, and I'm glad that he's also on the show, and it would be good to interact with him as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Kumar. I'd request Dr. Ranga Reddy to speak a little bit about his work.
To unmute myself. So, very good evening, friends. Mr. Anand, Saivan, Krishna, and probably several other people, probably which I could recognize by name, but not by the titles. You know what I see here. A very good evening to all of you. I'm extremely happy today to be part of this conversation. I am sure this conversation is going to evolve into something which is going to make a difference to the future pandemic preparedness and also doing something worthwhile for the society. Not really much, I can talk about myself, after Dr. Anand, I think, my story would be a very pale story, in terms of academic and professional achievements, but still let me actually give you a little overview. I hail from basically a kind of faction-ridden Palnadu area. That's part of Andhra Pradesh. That's where I hail from. Born into a humble but politically influential family there, with several elected representatives being part of the family. Grown up with a lot of background chatter and discussions, with frequently heard words like oppression, revolution, downtrodden, emancipation, labor rights, etc., etc. Most of those words probably did not make much sense as a small kid those days, because most of my life I have spent away from my parents, barring a few early years in my life. So those days probably they did not make much sense, all those big, very heavy words. But I think, as I have evolved from a kid into an young man, and then, today a kind of mature person, I think those words have actually played a significant role in forming probably my worldview, and also probably, if I had to say, a life purpose, probably. If I had to say, about my educational background, I studied my medicine, then I studied my management from Pondicherry, then I studied my advanced management with a specialization in strategy and organizational structure from ESC, that is in Spain. My medicine, which has been done, it was it was in Belarus during the days, when the Soviet Union was still a superpower. That is very brief. I always learned as I went on with my work. It was not that the whole educational process was one bit. It was quite fractioned. As I evolved, probably I started doing more and more programs, adding probably more degrees and also little bit of knowledge over a period of time. Life of mine, I think, it was full of accidents, seriously. But other than probably barring my birth, which probably my meticulous parents would have planned very well, Other than that, I think every other thing had been an accident. Life has taken me to something like 70 plus countries where I studied, found my love, lived and worked with many nationalities, like from Indians to Icelandians, British to Bangladeshis, Cambodians to Cubans, Russians to Rwandans, Arabs to probably Americans, etc., etc. That has given a really a good measure of understanding of a role of uh, human relations in forming kind of your opinion on what to do, and also to shape your kind of destiny, right? Because the people keep talking about the destiny is always in our hands. I think these kind of relations, these kind of experiences, that is what probably makes you richer in terms of understanding how to go about you know making your decisions, making your mission for your life, your vision for your life, etc., etc. One motto always had been in my life was to touch as many lives as possible during this short lifespan. A lot of great things have happened to me. They were like, the global networks, enriching experiences, and partly probably, some humble contributions to society as a clinician, as an executive of a few companies, which are mostly into pharmaceuticals and biologicals, and also medical devices, an entrepreneur, an academician, and probably a social activist. Um, Although I have said earlier that my life had been full of accidents, but not quite right, because any accident, like we say an extempore delivered kind of speech is a well rehearsed one, right? You do it a lot of times rehearsed, then only a good extempore can come out. Likewise, probably some of those accidents which have happened, while making a choice to take that route, probably would have been guided by the wisdom what you have gained. So those are the few things I would like to talk about. Currently, my mission and efforts are to improve the preventive healthcare in India, and also other low and medium income countries. I am currently involved in research, awareness, and education to create the capacity of infection preventionists and also the One Health specialists for especially the developing world. That's about me, and probably as we go on, if there are any other clarifications required, I will go on with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranga Reddy. In case anyone has any questions, please add them to the chat and they'll be addressed at the end of the webinar. And Krishna.
Yeah. So we would like to start this discussion with first placing a question to Dr. Anand Kumar, because you're in the vaccine industry. Could you perhaps give us a quick overview of what a vaccine is? What are the vaccines available in India for COVID specifically, and the various technology platforms being used to actually make them?
This is a very long question. So, before I talk about vaccine, I just want to I think that how let me view it as a human being. Our body primarily has the ability to differentiate between heat, cold, and cold. So our body knows exactly what are our parts, what are our organs, what are our cells, and it always differentiates between something that heat and nothing. And in some cases, our body loses that stability and that autoimmune disease. So whenever something foreign, which is not a part of our body, comes into us, So our body has a mechanism, which is the immune system, which has the ability to mount the immune response. It is required to protect us. And also as a part of that immune response is certain memory, which recognizes the foreign world for a long period of time. So given this thing about our ability of the body to differentiate between food and food, where lies the principle of vaccine? Vaccine is basically a biological preparation. It contains the organism that causes the disease, but it's in a very, very safe form. Or I would
Anand Kumar, your voice is not very clear. Could we just check your mic for a second?
so, is it audible now?
Yes, a lot better now.
Okay. So where do I start from the beginning or like? Okay. I'll start from the beginning in a abbreviated manner. So vaccine. Before I talk about what is a vaccine, I just wanted to tell you that the beautiful ability of our body to differentiate between self and non-self. So there are systems within our body which, whenever it recognizes something foreign, will mount an immune response, and that's a mechanism by which our body protects ourselves from anything foreign. So, vaccine is based on this principle that where a vaccine is a biological preparation which contains the organism that causes disease, but it's presented in a form that is very safe. That means it's either weakened or inactivated form. So that way, what happens is, see, when a foreign pathogen enters into our body, it takes some time for our body to generate an immune response. Okay, so it's a battle going on there where the organism it wants to, ascertain its importance and remain within the body, and thereby it tries to circumvent any other mechanism that lies within the body to protect against this invasion. So our body's responsibility is to bring in all the soldiers or all the weaponry which is there as a part of the immune system and mount a solid response against this foreign object and try to remove it from the system as early as possible. So it is in this time period, if your immune system is good, then you survive this battle. If your immune system is weak, then the organism, whether it is a bacteria or a virus, will overcome you, and then you will suffer from disease and all the other symptoms will. So what a vaccine does is, like, when it's administered to young, healthy individuals, that means we are showing our body this foreign organisms or a part of the foreign organism in a weakened form or in an inactivated form, so that our body recognizes this foreign organism upfront. So in future, when such an organism or when we are exposed to a similar organism in the future, since our body is already well primed to this or well tuned to this organism, it doesn't waste time on mounting an immune response. So the immune response will be immediate, in the sense that in the first instance, if you are not vaccinated, your body will take some period of time to mount an immune response. And if that immune response takes a long time or is in a weak form, then the organism will overcome you. So you will succumb. Whereas if you are vaccinated, since the body is already tuned or familiar with this organism and all the immune mechanisms are in alert level, so subsequently, when you are exposed to this organism, your immune system would be able to defeat this. This is the simple principle of a vaccine. So if you talk about what are the types of vaccines, there are different types of vaccines now, especially related to COVID. You have various platforms. You have the mRNA vaccines, you have inactivated vaccines like the Covaxin, you have live adenoviral vector vaccines like Covishield. You have live attenuated vaccines like what IAL is developing, and we are at this moment. I'll be happy to say that all the animal trials have yielded the desired results, and we already filed an application to for a test license to make batches for human trials. So there are different types of vaccines and different platforms which are used, and each has its own advantages and disadvantages. For example, an inactivated vaccine, the advantage is that it can be done very, very quickly, in the sense that all you have to do is just take the virus from the first infected individual, then grow it in your manufacturing facilities in large scale, and then inactivate it and then that forms the vaccine. So it's very, very simple to do. But the problem is that these inactivated vaccines always would require frequent boosters, in the sense that for a country like ours with 1.3 billion people, if you want to make it like an annual exercise to vaccinate 1.3 billion people, it's not going to be feasible, and the country will be drained of severe resources, because you have to spend a lot of money on vaccinating our people. Rather, live attenuated vaccine, as I explained to you, what we are developing, it's a single shot or at the most a two-shot vaccine. And these live attenuated, because the virus is a live virus, the immune system is, it's all well known that the immune system, provides you a prolonged memory as well. So and also stimulates a very high level of antibody response and cell-mediated immune response. So the frequency of use of a live vaccine is it's 1 or 2 shots. So again, all these the mRNA vaccines, they've all been licensed for the first time in the world. What Pfizer makes and what Moderna makes. So I mean, they all have been useful now because we didn't have much choice, because there are no and this is not a time where in a pandemic nobody. I mean, a lot of studies are done concurrently. So it's a risk benefit thing whether you take the vaccine or you wait till it's completely proven that it's safe and efficacious. I mean, if you have to wait completely without being vaccinated for whatever period of time, then whether you would be really alive for that period of time. So these are all, you have to weigh the pros. That's how the vaccination strategy in the country was like, we will give it first primarily to the healthcare workers, and then we will give it to the frontline workers. Then we will vaccinate all people above age of 60, and then we will do between 45 to 59 who have comorbidities. So that's how it's been done. So that way, some level of risk we de-risk by taking this kind of an approach. Okay. So today, for two licensed, I mean, they're not licensed, they're actually licensed for in an emergency use mode, that is Covishield and Covaxin. And another thing that I wanted to tell you is that our capabilities, I mean, there are 2-3 considerations. One is, does this intervention work? So it's been well proven, and it's over 200 years of history of vaccination. Okay, so it's this intervention of vaccination to prevent or cure or to prevent or to eradicate disease is all well proven. So the intervention is a proven intervention, and next is the capabilities to produce vaccines. Now that way, India is very, very fortunate. Today, if you see, 65% of vaccines procured by UNICEF is manufactured from India. So we are very lucky. I mean, just imagine a situation where a country has to deal with 1.3 billion people and not having the ability to develop any vaccines. See, there are a lot of other measures suggested for reducing the spread of disease, including social distancing, frequent sanitation of hands, frequent washing with water, and masks. I mean, these are all okay, but it is very difficult to maintain this kind of, like, say, in social distancing, especially if you see a lot of families live together very, very close proximity. So I don't know how all these measures. So vaccination, on the other hand, is a very, very simple approach, and it's much more cost-effective approach than any of these other interventions that are being proposed. So for our country per se, I think vaccination is the only solution to this problem. And till the time all those vaccinations are completed, which the government is hoping that they should be able to do it by end of December. Of course, all the other things that are being suggested, including social distancing, wearing of masks, they're all very, very necessary. And today, if you see, the government of India, I mean, though we are not a very developed country, but there's significant amount of effort being put in by the government to ensure that all our citizens are vaccinated against diseases. So even today, before COVID, I don't know how many of you would know that the government of India was providing vaccinations free of cost for its entire population as needed for 12 diseases. That means for various bacterial and viral diseases from day 0 of birth till 16 years of age. So in the first year itself, I think 19 doses of vaccine are given to protect you from 12 diseases. And if you see how much the government of India is buying these vaccines for these 12 diseases is only 1,300 rupees. So for 1,300 rupees, you are able to protect a citizen in this country for 12 diseases. Whereas the same thing, if you go to, like, say, the United States, each of these vaccines will cost you not less than $30 to $35. So this is again another big thing that the vaccine companies in India have done, because it's enabled very cost-effective supply of vaccines to the government, and that way the money that was intended normally for these kind of purposes was used for other beneficial purposes as well.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Kumar. That was very insightful. Um, so moving on to the second half of this webinar, we'll be discussing the role of innovation and technology in tackling public health emergencies. To start off with, I'd like to ask Dr. Ranga Reddy about the challenges that come with vaccinating a country like India, having the world's second largest population, specifically logistical problems, and how are they being addressed?
Well, as Dr. Anand has mentioned, to vaccinate such a large populous country is very difficult, especially when we are talking about a disease which is unknown to us, and where we had to think and also develop some kind of vaccines or other medical interventions which are required in order to tackle such kind of emergency. There will always be a lot of confusion, and these confusions are very natural for any pandemic kind of situation. Not only pandemic, but any public health emergency of international concern. We usually see a lot of confusion in the beginning because we don't know, especially when we are talking about a virus which is invisible. So to fight with an invisible enemy which is not known to us, it is not very easy to do that. So having said that, we had enough time between the first wave and the second wave in order to prepare our country to effectively handle the cases, the fatality rate, and also the case load, the transmission, etc., etc. In fact, at Infection Control Academy of India, we have given a roadmap to the government of India at the very early stage, probably in the beginning of this year itself, where we have talked about 2-3 major things. One is to actually vaccinate all the population, irrespective of their age, because if you look at coronavirus or the COVID-19 disease, what we are currently seeing, there is no one person on this earth who is not vulnerable, and hence actually making a differentiation probably would not have given, or as we already see that it did not give much benefit to the government or to the public. There are several countries who have gone identifying the high risk population, and they started actually vaccinating those people, like in US and Europe, because they have got a lot of aged population who are above 60. They started with the geriatric population, then gone to the health workers and the frontline workers, etc., etc. In India, having a very young demographic, we have probably just replicated what Western world has done without being mindful of our entirely different demographic. So that also has caused a little trouble. The second thing what we always talked to the government and we advised was to ramp up the manufacturing and also allow as many players as possible, so that we get enough number of doses to to take care of that minimum number of people who are to be vaccinated in order to get that herd immunity. Because as you know, the herd immunity can be achieved either by the natural infection or through the vaccination. So, at least 60%, that is about 70 crore population had to be, vaccinated. Then only we would have achieved that kind of control of this pandemic. Uh, but whatever were the reasons, or probably the government has underestimated the threat of second wave, and probably somebody would have falsely modeled the pandemic situation and suggested that India has reached herd immunity, and which has encouraged the complacency and insufficient preparation, which has resulted in a very massive kind of second wave. Yes, there had been a lot of logistical issues because these vaccines, all of them, they need cold chain maintenance, especially if we are talking about the Covishield, Covaxin, even the third vaccine which is approved in India as emergency usage, for emergency usage, that is Sputnik. All of them, they required cold chain, and to build a cold chain and to properly transport, that also is quite a complicated affair. But having actually the prior experience of giving 19 different 12 different vaccines for the childhood kind of infectious diseases, that has really helped actually to gear up the whole process. All in all, it is very easy, of course, to be clever in the hindsight and also to criticize somebody being on the shore. But definitely, India has done a satisfactory job, but it could have been better if we had better preparation, and also we used the between the pandemic waves for effectively in order to ramp up the manufacturing, building actually the logistics, and also ensuring giving the jobs to the maximum number of people.
So, sir, on that regard, what do you think would be the next pandemic, or do you think there will be any future public health emergencies? If so, what kind of risks would that pose towards the human life, and how can we tackle it?
See, this is not going to be the last pandemic, and neither it is first nor it is going to be the last. These pandemics we had been, if you go back into the history, from the earliest recorded was something like the 4th century one, which has happened in Athens, where almost 25% of the population had been decimated. So future pandemics are likely to emerge from ecological process, that is climate change, loss of biodiversity, anthropogenic social process, that is like corporate interests, culture, and globalization, and probably even the world population growth, which is happening exponentially. All of these are going to create more and more pandemics. It is evident that we shall have these public health emergencies of international concern in the future with increased frequency, and probably they would have higher devastating capacity than the earlier ones. Intervention would therefore require modifications or dampening these generators, which I talked about, and prevent future periodic pandemics that would reverse the human development. Because as a human race, we have achieved a lot of development on multiple fronts. But if we want actually that not to be reversed, we had to ensure that these pandemics are going to be addressed properly with the proper preparedness.
Dr. Ranga Reddy, thank you for that. So taking that forward, as a UAV engineer, I've been working on developing drones for medical delivery for T-Works. I know we have some engineers and makers in the audience today, so we'd love to know how we as engineers and makers can be a part of the solution and how we can reframe our thought process around innovation and COVID.
Well, I think we should not be, in my opinion, looking COVID as a centerpiece to find the solutions for the future, right? Um, Engineers definitely can be a big asset in preparation to the next pandemic. Engineers probably can think about frugal but at very effective solutions. When we talk about generally the preparedness, right? Um, it is multi-component and multidisciplinary kind of thing, which has been prescribed by World Health Organization, which is the starts with regulatory capacity building, laboratory and surveillance, estimating the burden of disease, and then risk communication, probably creating various departments and interlinkages, and then all of this together should throw some kind of solutions which can give an effective response, which can be an effective response in order to tackle any public health emergency for that matter. Usually, again, when we talk about any pandemic or any public health emergency of this nature, like COVID, the major components are, first of all, the contact tracing, quarantine, then thinking of, the planning, tracking, tracing, then medical supplies, and the clinical management. These are usual components of any kind of response to any public health emergency. So in each of these components, what I have talked about, there could be a role, which is going to be, which can be played by the engineers. I can talk about, multiple examples. For example, probably Dr. Anand would be a better person to talk about actually the future vaccines. Let's say, today's vaccines, most of them are injectables. Can we actually make these vaccines much more amenable for the people so that they can take without the fear? Because we know that most of the people fear the injection. Can we make actually the needles or the syringes which are going to be much more patient friendly, or the friendly for the people who take such kind of action, vaccines? Or can we think of some kind of vaccines which are going to be based on inhalers, or like a patch, or micro needles, etc., etc. Can we think of them? For example, the recent Gavi has come with a proposal that they would like to come with a vaccine platform which is going to be called as Disease X platform, which can be universal in nature, enabling quick ramp up in the time of crisis, with use of easily sourceable local material and easily substitutable, whenever there is going to be a kind of issue with sourcing from other countries. I can talk about, for example, the masks, which have become the necessity during the COVID time. But at the same time, if 130 crore people every day, if they are going to use disposable masks, we know that it is going to cause a huge ecological problem very, very soon. So can we think of a mask which is going to be a multi-use with some kind of sensors and can give a signal when it is time to change the mask or change the filter, probably, right? Can we think of, let's say, better cold chain systems? Because I talked about actually the vaccines and also the problems related to their transportation because of the maintenance of the cold chain systems. Today, cold chain systems are, in my opinion, quite primitive because they are not yet so evolved where we can ensure that we are going to maintain that temperature all the time and ensure that we can take it to the even rural areas without fearing that we may lose the efficacy of those things. Today, most of the vaccines are carried by antenatal nurses or the public health workers in the villages. They carry these vaccines by boxes where you put ice packs which work for a very limited time span. Can we think of, let's say, a perpetual cooling system or a cold chain system with use of, let's say, non-conventional energy and probably extra long-acting rechargeable batteries? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I can only think in a very limited way, right? Like a user. Can we think, let's say, of monitoring the air quality and sampling continuously for pathogens like viruses, bacteria, and fungi with self-contained analyzer that requires no additional laboratory tests or movement of samples? Because as you know that we had been warning the people to avoid the closed premises, especially where there is a kind of artificial air or mechanical ventilation, etc., etc. In these schools or offices, if we can have some kind of monitoring of air quality, like there are, I know that there are already a lot of monitoring systems for some of the volatile gases, etc., etc., or you have got alarming systems for the fire, right? So likewise, can we actually devise some kind of analyzers which does not require any additional laboratory test or movement of samples? Can we do that?
These are very exciting ideas, sir. Actually, you have gone through a whole scope of ideas, I think, which really opens up a lot many opportunities for people to think here. But for a minute, I'll just take up Dr. Anand Kumar. Sir, can you specifically go into this mode of giving the vaccines? Dr. Kumar, sir? Am I audible?
Giving vaccines in the sense, like I didn't understand the question.
So right now, one of the idea that has been shared by Dr. Reddy is to use a nasal vaccine, right?
Yeah.
So the mode of actually presenting the vaccine, are there any ideas that you can share with our team here?
Okay. In terms of administration of the vaccine, the prominent routes as of now are the oral vaccine route, which is like the polio vaccine, which you take it early, and or the rotavirus vaccine. And the other route that is most commonly used is the subcutaneous route. Then you have the intramuscular route, and you have the intranasal route, which you just described now. The intranasal route, especially for respiratory diseases, like you have a licensed vaccine adopting the intranasal route for flu in the US. So typically for COVID-19 also, that would be a very, very good route to try, because it actually, the path of entry of this virus is through the respiratory route. And if you have a vaccine which could actually stimulate a lot of immune activity in the respiratory route, that would be good. The thing is that for safety reasons, I think all the companies prefer to go take the subcutaneous route. And then I think not long from now, you find vaccines for COVID-19 using the intranasal. The advantages of intranasal route is one, it's not an injectable. That means you don't have to the advantages are like there's less use of plastic. For vaccine administration, you need to use a lot of syringes, and also for young children, like they are very scared of injections, and that again, there's a lot of resistance for people to come and take vaccination because of the fear for injections. But if you through the intranasal route, I think there'll be more acceptability, and you would get better coverage, and also it's much more less technically intensive to administer, and also I think the number of people that can be covered in a session through the intranasal route would be much more than following the injectable route. So I would tend to think that see our candidate that we have tried both the intranasal route and the subcutaneous route. Just for just we said that okay, we'll try the subcutaneous route first, and then we will come to the intranasal route based on a later period of time. So that's actually a very advantageous thing to do for especially disease.
So actually, further adding to this question, how do you think engineers or makers can be a part of the solution in this mode of delivery that you've just explained?
So, Dr. Puri and me are not engineers, but I mean,
Absolutely.
this is an opportunity for many people from all kinds of fields to contribute. I wouldn't say it's just a healthcare related issue alone, and it's only the medics or the paramedics who will be involved in this. This is for everybody. You know, all aspects of things have to be. I can see a lot of today. One of the biggest things as to why there are very few vaccine companies is that very capital intensive to start a vaccine manufacturing facility. So one is that you have to spend a lot of money on heavy equipment, stainless steel, and also it takes a long period of time to. Most of these are all imported, and so if there's some efforts to localize manufacturing, and also if there's some other mechanism rather than because construction of these huge stainless steel bioreactors take long period of time. If there's something that which can come up like say with the use of plastic and it's like a single use systems. I mean, today we do have bioreactors which are single use, which have come in plastic where you just use once and you can throw it. So that way, one is that you can build a facility in quick time because you don't have to go through this whole process of ordering and fabrication and getting the because single are available off the shelf and then you can buy and get started straight away. And also single-use systems gives a lot of flexibility. Today, you know that majority of the vaccine, the largest procurement of vaccines in the country is by the government. Okay, the government procures vaccines based on tenders. So they float a tender, and for every vaccine based on the quantities, they all companies participate, and then based on whoever is the lowest bidder gets the tender, gets the order. Now, if you have built a facility spending a lot of money on infrastructure and you don't win tenders, then that creates such a big issue to the company because what do you do with all this equipment? What do you do with the people who have been trained in? So that's why if you see the vaccine industry is going through very aggressive competition in terms of pricing, and the government ultimately is benefiting out of this competition because we are in a catch-22 situation. Do we make something or just keep it idle for the rest of the year? And so, but at some point, this won't become sustainable. So at some point, this competition will just drag down to a point that it won't be. Today, if you are giving 19 doses and the cost of 19 doses of vaccine which will protect you from 12 diseases, how is this going to be sustainable? So I think in terms of manufacturing, I think you engineers can play a significant role where you can come up with certain manufacturing equipment, are not relying on stainless steel and are single-use and disposable systems. And in terms of supply chain, as you say, I mean, you don't know the complexity of, I mean, what we are facing now, vaccine supply across the country. There's no parallel to this. If you have to vaccinate, let's say our population is 1.36 crores.
Dr. Anand Kumar, I think towards the end, your voice was not very clear. Could you just repeat the last couple of sentences?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you engineers can contribute is to come and develop single-use or disposable systems, which definitely will shorten the time required to start manufacturing anything. And the other thing is that, as I said, currently the price of vaccines in India is very, very economical, and the price of for 12 releases, 19 shots at 20,500 rupees is just, there is no, and the logistics and supply chain, that the problem that we are undergoing now is unparalleled. So definitely, I mean, you engineers can help in two ways. One is help in developing thermostable formulations where you don't require a cold chain in the first place. So that all this drama related to logistics and supply chain and power cuts in a lot of rural areas where the vaccine has to go. I mean, definitely you need to keep the uninterrupted supply of power to keep this at 2 to 8. Most vaccines have to be kept at 2 to 8 degrees, and definitely you can contribute to either developing a formulation or something that is thermostable, which can be kept at room temperature, or you can also help in, like say, even if the power goes, how do you design systems that can hold that 2 to 8 degree temperature for, I don't know, like currently, if it is for a few hours, maybe for 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, if you can help. So that way, definitely that'll help, especially in the rural areas. Then other thing that because you just briefly told me about your experience and your ability to develop drones, so though not in the immediate future, I think in a lot of rural areas where access and delivery is very, very difficult, and especially in these mountainous terrains, if you have a landslide or something, then it's very difficult to get any transportation through that place. So I think in the long term, whatever these drones that you mentioned, I mean, currently it's being used for delivering food and other things, but I'm sure at some point they will help, take some very, very needy medication to certain rural areas. So I think, and a lot of other things in the testing side, maybe you can come up with some non-invasive, where currently today everybody has to go to a diagnostic lab, or somebody from the diagnostic lab has to come to, so some kind of a self testing home side kit where you can quickly diagnose yourself, and that'll also be very, very helpful. See, one thing that what this COVID-19 is doing, I mean, I would always take the positive side of what is happening now, because this is, I mean, if you see the healthcare spend in our country, it has been very, very frugal compared to even our neighboring countries. Now, this has caused a lot of awareness, both from the public perspective as well as from the government side, to say that, okay, if we have to, like grow as a nation, then you have to prioritize healthcare. Otherwise, this is not going to go anywhere, and our country cannot face another pandemic of this nature in quick succession. But there are some good lessons being learned, and I think we are all preparing ourselves. So if something were, I mean, as Dr. Buri said, it is unavoidable that something can happen in the future, because if you see, 75% of all emerging diseases are zoonotic in nature. That is, they are moving from animals to humans. And so that being that, I don't see that this will be the last. So there would be again some other thing. We don't know when. But what would have happened after this COVID-19 is we would be much better prepared to face whatever is coming by, whether it be the healthcare system, whether it be the manufacturing capabilities, whether it be the supply chain and logistics, or whether it the speed of administration of vaccines. So there are a lot of lessons being learned. I mean, of course, it is very easy to sit in the comforts of our home and criticize both the center and the states about, this is not there, that is not there. But see, frankly, we have never had to face such a serious disease of this nature, which is spreading at such a rapid speed. So I would tend to think that you engineers can, I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, the industry is looking for innovators. I mean, having said that, I would say that pharma industry is a highly resistant to any change, because we are one of the highest regulated industries, and change is a very, very bad word in the pharma space. But definitely that aspect remains only with the manufacturing and quality, but how we operate as a company, again, definitely you have a lot of role to play.
That was very insightful, Dr. Anand Kumar. I'd like to follow this up by asking you, what can MSMEs do to help in epidemics such as COVID? And can they in any way increase the effectiveness of the battle against COVID and other such epidemics?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, see, today MSMEs have done a significant role. It's not easy to mask up 1.3 billion people, is like, and to provide sanitizers and for all the country's requirement is not. See, we were a net import right at the start for first few months, and the speed at which all these MSMEs came up with the goods. So until today, we are net exporters of all these things, right? So they have a very, very significant role to play. I mean, it's like, like I highly rate these MSMEs. I mean, I don't think that big is better, because without the support of these MSMEs, I don't think anybody could have. These are all the building blocks for any big entity. I mean, without them, we are not there, pretty much. So definitely, they have a very, very important role. I mean, there's a lot of things which are required now, and whether it be gadgets or whether it be consumables, definitely the MSMEs I mean, I think the government also has taken a lot of initiatives to support them. The only thing is that all the finance related, because these are small companies, and once you have a crunch situation like this, they really struggle for money. And I think the banks also are trying to be, through government's intervention, are trying to be a bit liberal. And I think we should support them. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Kumar. Dr. Ranga Reddy, can we have your opinion on this as well?
Yes, I think there are a couple of things which I would like to add on to what Dr. Anand said. One is the role of engineers. I think there is a lot actually to be done. Um, if you look at the pharma, biotech industry, and also healthcare as such as an industry, today the role of clinician without the technology is inconceivable. You know, if there is no technology, there is no doctor, right? As a clinician, I was trained actually to use my stethoscope and also do the kind of some kind of manual intervention in order to understand some of the diagnostics, right? But today, practically, we rely 99% on the technology, either it is diagnostics or the machines, etc., etc., in order to do the diagnosis and also the treatment. So the role of engineers is unbelievably high in the new age healthcare. I think without them there is no healthcare, and that is the first point I would like to add on. Second is, as Dr. Anand was talking about, especially in pharma and especially in the biotech, especially when we go through these kind of pandemics, the role of actually scaling up in a fast-paced manner is very, very important in order to reduce the impact of that public health emergency, right? So from my experience of listening to you guys, maybe you can do some kind of 3D design or 3D printing of a whole bioreactor, or for that matter the whole line of manufacturing, right? Which could be done in no time, probably in within let's say a week's time, and you are up and running actually to produce n number of different products including vaccines in order to cater to that particular thing. Role of MSMEs, yes, certainly without them there is nothing. I think we have already seen the fragility of our globalization. I keep actually reminding about this book by Taleb Nassim, where he talks about antifragility, where traditionally the complex systems have been characterized by either their fragility or their robustness or the resiliency. But Talib always talks about this having this control of the volatility through anti-fragility. I think that is the word which we had to very frequently remember, probably, and also implement, because as I said earlier, we have seen during this pandemic or even during earlier ones, how fragile is the globalization? How fragile is the globalization, right? When everything comes to a standstill, when the borders are closed, the transport systems are banned, there is no way we can get timely help from anybody despite the strongest desire what they may have in order to support you. So, the best examples were ventilators, oxygen, medical supplies. You know that, the oxygen is available somewhere in the east, but there is no transportation available, right? So, going ahead, I think especially for you guys who are in your probably mid 20s or early 30s, or certainly, you would be facing more disruptions, more chaos, more emergencies than what my generation or my past generations have seen. Hence, reframing actually your thought process is very essential in order to deal with the future emergencies like epidemics, pandemics, etc., etc. And one more just point, and then probably I will give back the mic to you, is that the innovation in this new era, especially the post-COVID era, had to be decentralized. It can never be centralized. If we are going to have centralized systems, we are going to miserably fail in the next pandemic. I would say it had to be some kind of very larger global alliance and collaboration at a huge scale, like a global scale, for localized kind of solutions. I think that is what is going to save the world, and also the world of yours, which is going to be, you know, and I am sure, like Anand mentioned, all these pandemic era innovations, what have happened, they are going to reshape life for a very long time to come. And I am sure that we all together would be learning many lessons which are going to be useful for the preparedness of the next one, which may strike us at any time. Let me actually not scare you, but let me sensitize you as a healthcare specialist, public health specialist, that don't think that the next one is going to happen after another 100 years. No, maybe it is just lurking around the corner. So we need to be ready for that. If we had to be ready for that, we had to reshape our thinking, reshape our framework in order to actually be prepared for that.
Thank you, Dr. Ranga Reddy. And thank you, Dr. Anand Kumar, for taking your time to share your insights. Uh, I, for one, learned quite a bit from today's session. I would now like to introduce Mr. Anand Rajgopalan. He's the Director of Operations at TWorks. I know that I can speak for everyone at TWorks when I say that his guidance has inspired us to work harder and better every day. Anand, could you please brief everyone, the audience, about TWorks and what we stand for?
Sure. Thanks so much, Saivan. Thank you, Dr. Anand and Dr. Ranga Reddy. Even I found that very, very helpful. In fact, um, I um, I had some personal questions about the vaccine and my, about when should we take the vaccine, or when should our parents take the vaccines. And this is a very insightful session. I didn't know, for example, that 19 doses are given in the first year of a child's birth. And it's amazing how, um, despite all the troubles, we see light at the other end of the tunnel. And I'm hoping that everyone gets vaccinated as quickly as possible. So, coming to TWorks, we are setting up India's largest hardware prototyping center. The mandate given to us was to what do we do to accelerate innovation in hardware design and innovation. Just like it's become significantly easier for us over the past decade or two to innovate in the software space, thanks to a lot of open source tools, thanks to a lot of course, we have a heavily English educated population. we were able to innovate on the software domain. What do we do to innovate on the hardware domain? The person leading this initiative, our CEO Sujay Karanpuri himself, is from a hardware product design and development background. He's from an electronics background. And as you see, people like Saiwan, they love building UAVs and building planes. So what we do is we are setting up this one facility where we have metalworking. We can work with sheet metal, for example, with stainless steel. We can work with wood. We can work with ceramics. We can work with plastics and composites. We used a lot of carbon fiber and fiber reinforced plastics for UAVs. We can work with various materials. We can work with additive and subtractive manufacturing. Dr. Ranga Reddy was talking about 3D printing an entire bioreactor. So given all this infrastructure under one roof, and given the kind of expertise that we are trying to build within the team, plus the expertise that we are trying to build within the ecosystem, we believe that the infrastructure is obviously important. It's a problem we can solve by throwing money at it. But getting the community together, getting the skills together, getting the people who can define the problem, getting the people who can find a solution to that together under one roof is what we are primarily trying to do. So this 78,000 square foot facility is coming up in High Tech City. Currently, we are working out of a smaller facility in Begumpet, where we do have some equipment already. We work with communities of engineers, of makers, of innovators, startups, MSMEs also. And our job is to support innovators from the stage of idea to the stage of their first version before they go to mass manufacturing. So it's after they have the idea, what we call a technology readiness level 3. We start from a TRL 3. We are not into fundamental R&D. And then we take them to a TRL level 8, 9, 10, where the technology is deployed on the field. So it's a combination of equipment with the machines that you're procuring and people and the skills and the minds. And we hope this combination will help create innovations of tomorrow, and that will solve pressing concerns, especially from an Indian context. In fact, our vision statement says that we want to create a culture of innovators, makers, and hobbyists who explore and experiment without the fear of failure in India. So I think what Dr. Anand and Dr. Ranga Reddy are saying about innovating in pharma, we would love to play some role in that. Maybe become a nodal point, have our team, have teams of innovators, understand what we can do, work more closely with Indian immunologicals, work more closely with other organizations, and understand how we can use technology to solve problems. And I think the first step for that is to be able to define what the problem is. And partners like IIML will be very, very useful in this endeavor. So the government of Telangana is investing a lot in this facility, and we are very hopeful that it'll be a showpiece for the city and the country, and it'll really accelerate innovation and development in India. Over to you, Saivan.
Thank you, Anand. So let's move on to the questions from the audience. We had KV Kumarnath ask, are there concerns about the safety of vaccines made with live viruses? This is directed to Dr. Anand Kumar.
See, there are, even as we speak, there are live attenuated vaccines used in the country. When you were a child, you took measles vaccine, which is a live vaccine, rubella vaccine, which is a live vaccine, the BCG vaccine is a live vaccine. So, live attenuated vaccine is not new in the sense that we have always been using it for so many years. The oral polio vaccine is a live vaccine. So the concerns of safety will be well addressed. That's why it's taking companies who are following a live attenuated vaccine pathway much longer than all these other people who came up with quick vaccines. Because, as I said, every vaccine has its advantage and disadvantage. The advantage of, as I said, of a live vaccine is it provides a long duration of immunity And the frequency of immunization is very, very less. And for a country like ours, it's well suited. But the speed at which vaccine development can come with a live vaccine is that you have to go to very, very long lengths to prove safety. And so that's what is taking us this time. Otherwise, once it's proven, then these vaccines have remained. I don't think there has been any issue with any measles vaccine or a mumps vaccine or a rubella vaccine so far. They've all been live vaccines which have been used for years and years now.
Dr. Anand Kumar, KV Kumarnath also wants to know what the status of your vaccine is, and in layman's term, what are the various steps that are involved, and how long do you think it might take for people to use it?
Okay, so we have now successfully completed the animal studies. I'll give you a brief about, the difference between a vaccine and pharmaceutical. The primary difference is that the vaccines are given only to healthy individuals. Okay, so that means you have to be absolutely sure that it's safe prior to administering, because you're giving it right from children to, and it's always given to healthy individuals. And so we have now completed all the safety and efficacy studies in animals. We have now sought government permission to make the batches for use in clinical trials. So once that permission comes by, we'll start production for clinical trials. And then we will submit samples. See, vaccines, all vaccines in the, see, one good thing, unlike pharmaceuticals, is that every batch of vaccine made in India is tested and released by the central government lab in Kasuli. So that's a double assurance that other than the manufacturer, there's also a government agency which tests every batch before providing it for immunization program within the country. So after the test by the government lab in Kasuli, we will undertake phase 1 safety trials. And after phase 1 is completed, we'll then go for phase 2/3 trials. And like other companies, probably in March 2022, we will seek a emergency use application. And primarily, whatever we make, I'll be upfront. We will produce only for India. And once we have so much we have so much of surplus that we can give elsewhere, then we will provide to other countries as well. See, here again, I want to tell you the importance of India in all these developing countries, because no other country has capabilities like what India has in the developing world. So we could actually play a significant part in trying to provide vaccines to all our neighbors and other Southeast Asian countries and Africa, entire continent, because they all need our help, you know. And today, the big people in the developed countries, they cannot make vaccines which are affordable to these governments. So the only way, that's one of the reasons why UNICEF buys 65% of vaccines from India, because we provide them at a very, very economical price.
Dr. Anand Kumar and Dr. Ranga Reddy, Tanushri asked about, is there a significance in keeping time between doses, or is that just to ensure that the government has enough time to supply vaccines or to keep up with the demand?
I think nobody would jeopardize the lives of their citizens by taking a call on of that nature, which is not backed by scientific information. I would tend to believe that whatever call that the government has taken is based on science.
Well, if I may have to add, um, you know, there is no doubt today that we must speed up vaccination rates to gain the protection that vaccines definitely will offer. Even if their efficacy against the Delta clan, which is being talked about, the Delta and Delta plus, etc., even if it is lower than against the wild virus or the initial alpha variant, it doesn't matter. We should go ahead and and we should get with available vaccines vaccinated, because as being told several times by me through various channels, TV channels and the mass media, that till we have an evidence that the Delta plus or the Delta has a greater capacity for vaccine evasion, we should not ring the bells and unnecessarily create a confusion which might lead into vaccine hesitancy. And you are all very educated people. You should not have these hesitations, because there are three things which you should remember. One, although these vaccines are produced or researched and developed at the shortest possible time, but there is a huge science backup which is of almost 2 decades of experience, especially when we are talking about viral vector kind of platforms. They were prepared when Ebola was in rise. So, and if we are talking about whole viroid, that is Covaxin, it is a time tested. Like Dr. Anand said, from childhood you had been getting some 12, 15, 19 vaccines, which were most of them were whole viroid or the attenuated or killed kind of virus. So you need not worry about it. That is the first thing. Second is the safety is proven. Unless the government was very clear that these vaccines are safe, they would not have approved. Okay, and also on the ground, as a public health specialist, what I see is the adverse event for inoculation or the immunization had been so minimal that it really doesn't matter. You don't need to have that fear that it is going to have some adverse event in the short term or the mid term or in the long term. So that is ruled out. So you had to go ahead and do that. And the last but not least I would like to communicate is in regard to the gap between the two doses. Gap between the two doses, the government has defined based on the scientific studies that after the first dose what is the kind of coverage you will get in terms of your immunity, and when the second booster dose had to be given. This is all very scientifically calculated. So don't actually go by this WhatsApp university kind of messages where they say the government has extended the gap between the two doses because it suits them or something like that. Don't worry about it. And adding to all that, I would like to say that even a single dose is going to give you more protection than not having it all. Especially if you are talking about Covishield or for that matter even Covaxin has got more than 50% protection already with the first dose itself. So you need not worry about it. You should go ahead and take whatever is the available vaccine without any hesitation.
That's about it. Simon, do you have any other questions?
So another question, is it true that we can still be carriers after getting all doses and knowing we have antibodies?
Absolutely. The vaccine does not actually make you completely kind of immune to getting the virus into your body, right? What vaccine does is, when this virus is going to re-enter your body, it is going to effectively recognize immediately and inactivate it or kill it. That is what is the process. So even after getting your 2 doses, it is not excluded that you cannot be a carrier. You can still be a carrier, and hence you had to ensure that you are going to protect all your 3 orifices through which the virus can enter, that is the mouth, the nostrils and the eyes. Okay, so you had to ensure even after getting actually the vaccinated both the doses, you have to ensure that you are going to have protection so that you don't become the carrier.
Dr. Ranga, we also seem to be garnering some interest regarding what you have spoken about being anti-fragile. I think you're trying to speak about surpassing a very heavy infrastructure in order to build platforms, if I may summarize it in that manner. Would you like to perhaps elaborate on that a little more or share some more thoughts?
Well, like I talked about it earlier, going ahead, the world as we see, as we used to be having this very romantic kind of idealism where we say that, the globe is a village kind of stuff. I think, that is going to be a wrong conception going ahead, right? Because the world is going to remain very fragile for all these zoonotic infections which are going to happen with a lot of rapidity. And if we want to have this anti-fragility kind of thought and also actions in place, we need to have the localized solutions where the people without any prior training, but just very intuitively they can handle the kind of machines or the kind of equipments which are required to deal with public health emergencies. That is one part of it. And second thing is the pandemic has required organizations to adapt more efficient ways of operating and accelerating the innovation programs, right? We need to adapt to evolving situation. There is no other option available for us. I will tell from my own experience. As you know that apart from being a clinician and public health activist, I also own a company or founder of a company called Sanmed Healthcare, where we produce all the kind of infection prevention and control products like sanitizers, disinfectants, antiseptics, etc., etc. When the pandemic struck, none of our formulas could be manufactured without getting the raw material from other countries or the other states, etc., etc. All the borders were closed. Nothing was available. So our team had to very quickly go back to the board and do changes to the existing formulas and find actually the local ingredients in order to make those kind of products. Why I'm saying about this is not to promote my company, but the organizations need to adapt in to more efficient ways of operating and accelerating that kind of innovation programs when we are stuck with some kind of emergency. And the last one I would like to say is that you all talk, especially your generation, you are very romantic about the idea of open source, right? Everything is open source, right? I think going ahead, one of the best solutions for the world to be anti-fragile is to build open source systems. Open source systems, so hurdles are removed, so that whatever solutions which are available are freely available for so that you can escalate your activity, you can replicate actually those solutions, etc., etc. I will just give one example, like Mr. Anand of T-Works was talking about actually the large infrastructure we are creating. I would also like to at this point of time give probably some unsolicited advice. See, today one of the biggest problems during the pandemic is getting the diagnostics, understanding actually who is sick, who is not sick, etc., etc. And as you all have faced probably during this time, how difficult actually it was to get COVID tested. I know how Saiwan probably could be one of those examples where he faced a lot of trouble, right? Getting this RT-PCR done, etc., etc. Because these are all closed systems where all the consumables, all those things which are required actually to operate these closed machines are monopolized. So unless you are going to break that monopoly through the open source systems, you would not have that anti-fragility system in place. So maybe you can as one of the areas of your focus, probably you can look at the diagnostic systems, right? The machines and the consumables which can be made at a fraction of a cost, at a very frugal cost, but at the same time from the material which is locally available, so that when you are going to be in midst of next storm, you don't need to actually make a call to US actually asking actually for a special flight to bring some consumables here, so that you can make them locally. Because today, as I am saying, The diagnostic systems are in handful of the company's clutches, like Biomedics, Roche, Abbott, Hoffman, etc., etc. I think you guys probably could look at that, which can really be a good one of the great kind of measures for the prevention or preparedness for the next pandemic when it is going to strike.
That was some great advice, Dr. Ranga Reddy. Thank you so much. A question to Dr. Anand. Just a quick, if you could quickly clear this. KV Kumranath still wanted to know what the status of the other vaccine that you intended to produce is.
Other vaccine, I told you, like, so it'll be available. We'll make an emergency license application, and we are hoping to make it available by March 2000.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand Kumar. Thank you, Dr. Ranga Reddy, and thank you, audience and everyone for your time. I hope this was a great learning experience for everyone.
Okay, just a last one I wanted to, because like I just see a lot of people here are young. And, you would tend to think that the companies know a lot, and how do I approach this? But the fact is that if you get into any company, you would see that our understanding all is very minimal, and it's just that the attitude of a company, if business is good, has been to just follow the same thing for years and years to come, and unless some fresh blood comes in, there's no desire to like just introspect and see whether we can do anything differently. So I think a lot of young people, rather than wait for the company to call and find out who you are, I think you should go to the companies and say, hey, give me a chance. Shall I be there for 3 months? Shall I just look into this, look into that, and see if I can make a difference? This is what consulting companies do, right? They just come, understand our problem, and then they make a good presentation and give a solution based on what our guys only think is the solution. And then they collect the money for that. And I think see, if you go, I mean, sometimes you don't have to think very big to innovate. Always we think that we have to be an Einstein kind of thing to transformational kind of. But you would be very surprised that some of the things, like I remember some 10 years ago in another organization when I asked, why don't you just, all the documents used to be one-sided, and I asked, why don't you just copy it on the other side? And then they said, sir, nobody told us to do this before then. And later, so you know what I'm saying? Like, you wouldn't think that a company which has been there for, like, that company that I work for, like, has been in existence for several decades, and nobody ever thought that if you photocopied on two sides, you would save paper. And so I think rather than wait for a company to call, you guys yourself can just go in. And I'm sure, I mean, at least in IL, we will give an opportunity to any of your people to come and visit and try to understand what we are doing. And if you find or give us a better way, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Kumar.
Thank you, guys. So we would like to interact more. Feel free to drop a mail or make a call. We are here to share whatever little we know, right? Through maybe gray hair is not the indicator of the wisdom, but still probably had to take that as a part of wisdom. Come back, and we are here to interact, find some solutions which are going to be good for the society, good for the country, good for the world.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being so humble, taking up our questions and trying to answer that the best way possible. That's quite inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and goodbye. Stay safe. When you have an opportunity to vaccinate yourself, please do. Like several people in the country, and not just in our country, across the globe, have taken the vaccines, and a lot of countries have literally, after taking vaccines, are roaming around just like normal, like the yesteryears. And so wait for, until you ascertain all the rest, then probably you'll be about 60, 70 years by the time you get.
Thank you. Thank you for your blessings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists.
Thanks to the audience as well.